Just to clarify, I mean, what you're saying is clear. I just want to say a few words to give a bit more of a framework so that you can kind of grasp at what might be going on and the implications and the kind of motives of that energy and why it's doing what it's doing. The more we see the kind of totality of what the mind is doing, the more we can, in a sense, be free from it, or there's a lot of different approaches, but one of them is very traditional, which is just keep seeing and keep kind of making an effort to push back on what you see. For example, if you see a habit of a kind of incessant movement or habit of thinking, to try to using some kind of willpower and determination, just create that space and hold back and create this distancing with that energy. And that is useful, but I don't find that it's useful entirely. It needs another way of addressing it, which is to really understand what's happening. Understanding it not from an intellectual way, but understanding in the seeing what it is. And so what I was describing in the meditation, which is this sense of I, the I points to something. We can use the I as a way of communicating, but when the I is an actual experience of a subject, but we it's a known subject. It's the I that we know. That's the story. It's all of the memory and the character and the line in time, where we came from, where we're going, how we are, what we are. All of that is known in that construction of the I, which is it's a mental. This is what's called ego, right? But I'm describing it with a different word for it too, because ego is a concept, and then we have concepts associated to the ego, and I don't want to go there. Rather, see it in real time. What's happening? It's this constant movement of images, thoughts, and a narrative in time. And as you pointed, that's helping you. This is a plural. It's humanity. It helps us contain some energies that are difficult, and which I just very briefly qualify as fear and pain. And you can unpack that as all kinds of sensations, fears, pains. But this energy of this I cannot function if we're not constantly energizing it. And so we need to go into the modality of time and I and time doing something. Where am I going to go? What am I coming from? Where am I coming from? Where am I going? What am I trying to get to? And we're following what we experience as desires. It's like an anxious drive, an anxious need, which I call the probably different ways, but I call it the limited desires, versus when I talk about the universal desire. So when it's coming from the narrative, there is an understanding of what am I doing and why. It's very rational. Even if it's not, it's emotionally there's a certain logic to it. And this can be addressed in psychology, and it can help clarify the mechanics of that, and it's really important to do. But in parallel, to see the whole thing itself is something we can kind of, like when we sit to watch a movie and we go into the movie and we forget we're sitting, those moments we are completely immersed in the reality of the movie. And with our minds, we create this narrative of I, and we get completely immersed. And then we're just functioning according to what the directives of that narrative imply. So I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to do this, and for this reason, and for that, and that's going to get me to this. And there's this chasing of a sense of something's finally at some point going to release when I get there. And I will get to that, the something that I think I want. Whenever I ask in a kind of in a guided way, when I'm working with somebody, to really inquire, what are you chasing? What do you really want? It always comes down to peace. Even if it's, well, I want to make more money, or when you keep asking, and what for the money, and what for the relationship, and what for this, and what for this problem solved, it's going to be, I just want a rest. I just want this kind of like peace. I want to be out of this incessant motion. And that is possible. It's just not possible within that movie, within that world of the I and time. That's the opposite of what we're looking for. And it doesn't mean we stop doing things, because that's again another strategy of the I. It's like, oh, now I'm just going to sit and not do anything. Who's deciding that? What's that going to achieve? Well, it's the same thing. It's a plan of this I that's going to, in the future, get to peace if I sit 4 hours a day, or some monks do 3 years, 3 months, 3 days in a cave. And there's quite a lot of stories about them coming out. They feel great, and then a month later, back to where they were when they started. Nothing changes, because there isn't the true seeing through of this mechanism. It might come across as like something special, but actually I'm just describing human mind. And so once it's seen, and it's universal. It's the functioning of the human mind. And it'll have different styles and preferences and ways in which it'll kind of function, and ways in which it'll avoid any kind of thing that challenges the mechanism. And the only way to be free from that, I would say maybe there's 2 ways. One is grace. It's like nothing you can do. But what can be done is to look. And in this type of conversation, there is hopefully clarifying, so that what you're seeing becomes more known for what it is. And I'll say a few more words on that. If I were to come into this world from a spaceship of another world and land here, and my world from this other planet is very different, I would see everything. Suppose like sensation perception works the same way, but I would have a hard time understanding what I'm looking at. You know, maybe a computer makes no sense to me. And so I will have a lot of interpretations about what I'm seeing that will be incorrect. And then somebody who lives here, Catherine, could tell, well, no, actually this is this and it works this way, and this is that and it works this way. That's what I'm trying to provide. Because as we look directly at thought and the mind, it's almost like we're moving into a dimension of seeing that is new. And the metaphor of the alien coming here, it doesn't totally apply, but it's basically we function as if what we're thinking about is reality, and the experience of what our thoughts are creating is real. And then we can start to perceive the difference between thoughts and reality. And what I was pointing to in the meditation is that at the core of that is the illusion that what I think I am is real, and it's actually that which I think I am. So when we refer to I, that which I is referring to, for most people, is a bunch of thoughts. But it's a bunch of thoughts that are really complex. And it's like a hologram of a self. It's a hologram of what I am. And then there is a belief that is what I am. And so we refer to I, and we refer to a bunch of thoughts. And then we've done this all our lives. We just live as if that narrative, that bunch of thoughts, is real and is real as what I am. Versus it's real as just a bunch of thoughts. And when you see, well, this is just a bunch of thoughts, then what am I really? Then we can see that there can be a shift where that subjectivity becomes a certain emptiness that becomes free from the attachment to being collapsed into this constant movement of thoughts. And this cannot happen tomorrow. This cannot happen because of anything in particular. It can only happen now by looking and by grace, but only now. So there's no strategy that can work. There are practices, but the practices will all point to look now. And the more you look, it'll start to unravel. And it'll unravel in different ways. It'll be scary, it'll be shocking, it'll unlock an emotional torrent where you will be experiencing pain. But in that process, something starts to free up. And I always highlight a kind of warning that as this happens, it will be challenging. Because the sense of self, what we believe to be all our lives, starts to disappear. And it really is. And the body responds to that as if the body was dying. The brain gets signals of the I that I am is ending, and the body reacts with all of the chemistry and the nervous reaction of death. There's very few exceptions where this has happened without this. But it's very temporary. It's like the choice is a long life of constantly chasing for something that's not there, or snapping out of that. And the snapping out is a shock. And it's been called the second birth because it's, as the first birth is a shock, but then also something new, what I really am becomes apparent. So that which I am is reborn in a sense. And for some people, this is smoother. For others, it's more of a shock. But it's very worth it. It's why I'm spending hours every week talking about it, because it's more valuable than anything I have known. So there's two options. One is,
get one each.
It's not gonna work. You fully buy into the promise of the mind and create this agreement, which is, I go to the mind and I say, please fabricate a future I can chase. And the mind's going to say, here, chase this. It's going to get you to that. Isn't it great? And you're like, okay, contract, deal signed. And then you go. And then it's a constant, right? It's a constant negotiation. Well, that didn't work, but hey, look at this. Oh, that didn't work. Oh, look at that. And that's 24/7. 24/7, this agreement. And this is agreement in fear. It's agreement. It's an agreement based on, don't look what's actually here. Just don't look. Chase this. And so what I'm pointing to, which you said sounds fun, is it's a bit dark, because it's what happens when you see from the perspective of being in that immersed process, all of what we've been working towards is not going to work. And what it'll take, as what I described as like the body experiences a shock as if it's dying, is that's exactly why we chase. Because right now, there are two possible deaths. And it's the same death, but one can happen before the body dies. So one death we try to escape from is the body dying. So we cannot tolerate that. And so we chase. And the other is the death of that which I think I am, the ending of that belief. And that's as scary because the mind cannot tell the difference between the body dying or that sense of I dying, ending, or even pausing. Yeah. Exactly that. And what it is literally just the body mind having a bit of an intense tantrum. But to us, it feels like the end of the world. It's all the time now, now, now. And that's why it's really hard to sit and be at rest, meditate, because if you're not energizing that activity, this anxiety is going to start creeping in.
So from the psychological perspective, I think what we're talking about is like drive or will. And there's lots of different psychologists that they all focus on a different type of human will or drive. And they all sort of say that theirs is the primary one or the most important one. But I think they're all there and they're all important and kind of in a spectrum. So like some of them that come to mind are like the will to survive, survival instinct, the sex drive, the will to superiority, and the will to meaning. So I think it like what Nico's saying is if you can go to that like completely direct seeing of what's really happening, that's obviously in a sense the most true or the best. But if you start trying to navigate in the moment, like what is this drive? Where's it coming from, you know? And sort of observe it a little bit, like in a more granular way, maybe. I think they kind of go in that order, like and they're all important, right? Like, but if your survival instinct is kicking in and like your life is not under threat, and then you can kind of go, okay, that's what's driving this behavior, and that's not really reasonable. So what's going on? Why am I feeling threatened to that level, you know? Or the one that was kind of jumping to mind for me is like this will to superiority. So that's a theory of the psychologist Alfred Adler. And he posited that it was a very positive thing for human beings to have a will to superiority. So it basically just means like doing your best to become better and better and better in your life is a like really positive thing. Or like we were watching this documentary about Quincy Jones. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but his will to superiority took him from like the most living in absolute poverty and squalor in racist US in the like 1930s, I guess probably he was born, to who he is today. It's like incredible. It's such a beautiful and wonderful thing. But the will to superiority, when it's out of balance, it's addictive, because it's taking you away from some feeling you don't want to feel, like the shame or or sort of some of the things that Nico is pointing to, like the terror of non-existence. And that's when you can get this really addictive, like, I have to be good all the time, I have to be amazing, I have to be the best. And yeah, and you lose track of what's it all for, right? Right, that's why I raised it, because I wondered if that was kind of it. It's like super prevalent in the Chinese community as well, right? Like that will to superiority in the Chinese community, to me, is admirable. But at some point, maybe it goes a bit too far. And then one of the best ways to settle that is to look at the will to meaning, like, well, what is meaningful to you? What actually matters to you? And then you can, that addictive, like, I'm not good enough drive can kind of settle a bit. But when the will to meaning, like some of the things that Nico is bringing, like it actually undercuts a little, even the will to meaning. And then, because what is the meaning of all of this? Like, we actually have no idea. But I don't know, maybe you want to pick that up there, like.
Yeah, what you're saying about meaning touches exactly on what I said in the beginning, that we can have a movement from something that's from this idea of what I am, and it's limited, and it's going to be based on fear. Or we can have a movement based on what I say, when I say, what does the universe want as you? And that's pointing to a kind of meaning that I think Kathleen is addressing, because it's what is so meaningful, so valuable, that it's kind of beyond life and death. That is, in a sense, it's beyond life and death. That it is almost more valuable than staying alive. When you are looking at life from that depth, from that perspective, that's what I mean by, what does the universe want as you? And so it's no longer the experience of just you on your own, separate in your own little world. Is the universe has manifested to live something as you universe. And I say it that way because it's also, it's somewhat palatable to a rational mind, that perspective. Instead of talking about more religious language, God, etc. It's, if you can imagine and tune into, there is a universe, and within that universe, something has emerged as part of that universe, completely inseparable from that universe, and that is you. And so now there is an energy, there's an energy that moves through you, which is, it's completely inseparable from the universe. And I will tell you, the universe as you wants something. And it's not one thing, it's a movement of, a really deep movement of, it's a love of life. but it doesn't operate on the level of what can I chase so that tomorrow I get this thing. It operates at a level of now. The kind of experience we touch when we are completely immersed in flow in a hobby, all of these moments that we feel like, holy cow, this is just transcendent. And that, in a sense, is possible always, because there only is this moment. It's just a perspective. The perspective I'm referring to comes from buying into a narrative that this moment has something wrong with it. And in a sense, it's like a denial to the creation. And then by knowing what's wrong with this moment, we can rationally convince ourselves to chase a narrative. But the fundamental error is in this belief that something is wrong with this, something is fundamentally wrong with this moment. And that's going to be something we walk with this wherever we go. We then project it. Okay, it's this relationship. I leave this relationship. Next relationship, same thing. It's not now, it's this job. I leave this job, next job, same thing. Because we're actually walking with this fundamental belief. Something here is not okay. It's not right. And it's going to be, well, it's me, or it's this person, or it's the government, or the explanation is going to be moving around to whatever thing is convincing enough. Depends on the personality. It's more often projected onto the world or onto oneself. And it moves from one thing to the other, but we have preferences or both. Yeah, it moves back and forth. Some people, it's all about the government, especially in places like Argentina, where the government is a problem. It's a very convincing narrative. In Canada, it's very hard to be always in, in a constant narrative of problem with the government, because
yeah, that's only because
you don't
know worse.
Yeah, maybe for me, because I know how much better it is. But
but the partner is a good one.
Yeah, the partner, it's the perfect narrative.
Money.
Exactly. Yeah. Always something. If you ask yourself, what is inherently missing, not okay with this moment? How often will you say absolutely nothing? Yeah. And what I'm pointing to in this last point is that this is a belief. There isn't anything wrong with this moment. And this can create kind of ramifications in a very kind of complicated debate, because then somebody's going to say, well, but what about all of the dying children and all of the wars and all of this and all of that? I'm pointing to something deeper than that, which doesn't deny the fact that there are things that are right now that would be better if we change them. But there's, at a deeper level, there's a belief. It's not we don't know it as a belief. We actually know it as a sense of I. This sense of I is the belief something is wrong right now. When you see it clearly and directly, that's what it is. And so to see that something isn't necessarily wrong right now could be very scary, because it'll again bring a sense of something. It's almost life-threatening.
What about right now?
This is a deep question. Just contemplate, what if nothing is wrong right now? And see what comes up in your experience. There's going to be possibly an eruption of sensations, emotions, thoughts. The more you deeply consider the question, if you hear the question, you repeat it internally, but you don't really consider the possibility, it's not going to do much, because but if you were to, what's the expression in English? It's like the benefit of, give it the benefit of the doubt that actually there is absolutely nothing wrong with this moment. What if that's actually a true deep possibility or reality, actually? That's exactly how it works. We enter. No, it's actually a taste of reality. And what happens, I mean, sometimes you might be in an escape, but in general, what you're describing is a taste of reality. And we call it, for example, we're in a state of flow. Any kind of situation that you kind of forget about yourself and you're just in experience. And then there's a sense of nothing is wrong right now. It starts to, the belief of something is wrong right now, together with the belief of I, kind of dissipates and goes into like a film that's stuck on the wall and I'm not paying attention to anymore. And we allow ourselves these tastes, but they're controlled. And so I can plan for it. Okay, later I'm going to sit at the piano. I'm going to spend 20 minutes. Or today after work, I'm so tired. I'm stressed. I want to get to the beach. Once I get to the beach, I will finally have a good moment. And then I get to the beach. It's beautiful. And I experience it's because of the beach. And actually, it's because for the moment I'm at the beach, I pause this belief that something is wrong or missing right now. and we attach it to experience. But the way this I, the ego, this I mind works is by orchestrating, planning. I'm going to get to that. And then we give ourselves a break to show us that to prove ourselves that it works. So it's like the carrot at the end of the stick. Once you get to that corner, you can take a bite. Oh yeah, it works. Go to the next corner. Now you can take another bite. But actually, if you undo the belief, if you see through it, you can eat the whole carrot all the time. It's an endless carrot.